Good afternoon, everyone. Good morning for a lot of you as well. We have people from all around the world. It's great to be able to be here. Hi, Mehdi. Hi, Kai. How are you?
Hello, Pierre. Thank you very much. What about you?
Very good. We are in the same team, but not in the same places. We have people at P1. We have people in I think it's like 15 or 16 countries overall, and there is people moving and traveling, not pointing fingers. But it's great to have you all with us. We are expecting quite a big number of people, so definitely very interesting to hear about the point of view of experts. It's a new format for us. What we are trying to build is a conversation space. This first one is with our P1 expert only, I would say, but we hope to be able to have other experts from with other perspectives in the future for other webinars. There won't be slides, there won't be research shared particularly. It's really our, you know, again, a conversation, a talk between experts. I'm not one, so I'm in charge of operations at P1. I will leave Mehdi and Kai maybe to introduce themselves before we get into the topic right away.
Okay, thank you, Pierre. So hello, everyone. My name is Mehdi, and I am a telecom security expert at P1 Security, and I intervene into different security topic in general, but mainly it will be around penetration testing of the 4G, 5G core.
Thanks, Mehdi. Hey everyone, I'm Kai Grundy, based out of UK. On a day-to-day, you will find me pen testing 5G core, 4G core, as well as the RAN side as well, and taking a research perspective on ORAN. So some of you may have already seen my webinar on ORAN in the past.
Thank you very much to both of you. And the first topic that we decided to address today is to take a rather high-level view on what happened in 2025 in terms of telecom security-focused attacks and the actors represented in those attacks. The reality that we are seeing as an offensive security firm is that. So first of all, we have to thank the regulator on mandating the MNOs to be public about what they are suffering from. That helps to raise the awareness that was not the case in the industry for the last 15, 20, 25 years. But on the other hand, it also shows how much vulnerabilities are exposed, exploited, how the actors are incentivized to do whatever they can and use very large pool of resources to get access to telecom assets. So without further ado, a couple of logistics elements. If you have any questions, again, this is a conversation. Please ask those questions as we go along. We are really hoping for you to be the fourth member of the conversation. So please share your question as much as we go along. And at the end, we'll have something we've been working on that we hope could be interesting for you to evaluate your risk exposure on telecom security. But first of all, let's discuss about the telecom security attacks of 2025. And my first question for you, I would start with you, Mehdi, is what would be, in terms of APT attack in the last 12 to 24 months, which one was the one that was the most impactful to you, to your mind, in terms of whatever the perspective that you want to take, but which one is your preferred one?
So when we look at what happened 2025, we have a lot of attacks that happened. It was a huge attack from different APT through different sectors, right? And here we are focusing more about telecommunications. So I would rather say the case of the SK Telecom. So the case of the SK Telecom was interesting because it was a wake-up call for this is what would happen if we don't apply security baselines. And when I say security baselines is proper network segmentation and also security hardening, as well as our ability of detecting the attack of the APTs. So we have seen that the APT, they were into the network from 2021, so almost 4 years within the network without, let's say, proper detection. And they managed to propagate from external perspectives, from internet, they have the initial access into the IT network, and they managed to propagate through the operation and management. So this is some kind of proof of lack of network segmentation, some kind of proof of security hygiene and hardening, in a way that there were some vulnerabilities that they could be exploited. It could be some kind of username and password that they are default, that led the attacker to move laterally until they arrive, for example, to the crown jewel or to the HSS, where they can take the and exfiltrate the secrets. So when the detection happens, it was already too late. When we see that a lot of traffic coming out from our network, outbound traffic going through external servers. But when we look at the end of the day, all this kind of attack, it will lead to the business risk, business impact, in a way that SK Telecom, they had a lot of loss in terms of business perspective. But also there is something interesting. It was the shift of the perspective of the MNOs. In a way, we have clients that they were coming after this is happening and saying, can you please test my network from now you are into the HSS and try to test the security of my HSM, of my any software encryption algorithm that I have to encrypt, for example, the KI of the users. And this is always happening with security. Wherever we have a huge attack happening, there is a wake-up call. Either regulation, they are putting some new text, some new laws, or even the MNOs now they have more aware that the initial access is already here. Now we don't care if we are, for example, compromised or no. We're going to assume that we are compromised to a certain level, and can you please from there try to reproduce this type of attacks?
And for me, this is one of the massive realities of MNOs. Such large organizations, that compromise is easy enough, I would say. Obviously, it's never that easy, but social engineering and the sheer number of consultants, employees, we have to assume, and we have to start the security posture from the assumption that people have some kind of access. And that's, very often where we start working with our customers is we don't start them from the social engineering phase. There is so many solutions that are out there, but assuming that it has been compromised. And I think this is one of the big cases of the latest attacks. On your side, Kai, if I can ask the same question, what would be the attack that most struck you from the last couple of years?
Yeah, sure. So I mean, for me, if I think about of recent news for APTs, I would pick out Salt Typhoon. And for me, there's a few reasons for it. But firstly, I just want to look at the fact that they are state sponsored and they have such high levels of sophistication. They're not like a typical ransomware group which they hold the network at ransom and they want to claim some sort of monetary value from the victim. In fact, they wanted to conduct state-level espionage against a telecom network of a country, in the US in this case. And the telecom network is, of course, critical national infrastructure. So some of their targets were even government officials or corporate intellectual property. And it wasn't that they just had such unprivileged levels of access. In fact, they were able to have very sophisticated levels of access. So at one point, they actually gained access to the the wiretap lawful intercept system of the US telecom networks, and were even reportedly taking voice recordings and phone call recordings of actual high-profile government officials during certain presidential campaigns. And they were actually able to stay within the network for over 2 years, whilst actually conducting such let's call it brutal attacks against critical systems. It wasn't like they were in the network being very quiet. They were being stealthy, but whilst performing actions which were giving them, they were able to exfiltrate such sensitive data. And as we see with Salt Typhoon, for this type of access they gained, they went through edge network devices. So they typically went through firewalls or routers at the edge of networks. And then once they actually exploited vulnerabilities within those devices, they were able to move laterally within a given MNO, or even move between MNOs, because this wasn't just one MNO that was supposedly attacked. It was numerous and a large number of actual American telecom networks. So it was just astonishing, really, the amount of reach they had, the ability to stay so stealthy whilst gaining such highly sensitive information.
Yeah, completely agree. And if we push on a little bit, technically, how, what did they use to not be discovered? You can imagine that they would try and do some attempts to connect and move and all of these. How do you reckon they've used to stay stealthy?
Sure. So I mean, we can look at it from a generic IT point of view. So let's say they gain access to a generic IT network, an attacker may use various techniques to stay undetected, and this could be topics we're all familiar with, like living off the land. So once they're actually on a network, they don't really deviate from what they already have access to. So let's say there are some binaries or some applications that are already deployed. They will use what's there. They won't incorporate any new elements. So they keep the fingerprint of the network the same. If you're looking at the network monitoring, let's say the SOC is monitoring the network, nothing's really going to get flagged out of the unusual if they're being stealthy and using these living off the land techniques. They're not introducing anything too different. Maybe they use protocols that are already there, but in a certain way. So they may masquerade as a legitimate traffic. So there is a technique such as port knocking, whereby, let's say within a network, TCP traffic for given ports is not so allowed. It's pretty expected depending on the deployment, and they can send this expected traffic in specific sequences. And at that point, their malware within the network would wake up, and at that point, you would start to see an extraordinary fingerprint in the network. But for the majority of the time that you're monitoring networks, you won't see anything too crazy different unless you really go deep and spend a lot of time actually looking within the network. But in addition to that, when we look at telecom networks themselves, they are highly complex. So in addition to the IT network and how they can hide, we had a massive amount of complexity. With mobile networks, we have many generations living together, interfacing with each other. So we have modern technologies, let's say 5G, 4G, but we also have old legacy infrastructure like 3G and 2G even, which cannot be turned off, yet. It cannot be sunset. I mean, the majority of networks have started to get rid of 3G, but they still have to have 2G there. And each of these generations have specific components with specific interfaces, procedures, and traffic flows on the network. So it's kind of the perfect environment for an attacker to hide in this minefield of complexity. You can imagine how difficult it is to actually understand everything within a network, but to actually see an attacker within that network in the middle of all these different traffic flows is extremely complex. And just one last quick point on that, to be really specific about Salt Typhoon. One mechanism they actually used to stay stealthy was they launched attacks from within containers. So as we know, with the 5G core network, we are moving to be more cloud native, whereby network functions would be deployed as containers. They would be containerized. So each of those containers could be a point to pivot attacks from, but the logging is not yet mature enough for containers in the telecom realm to actually understand and see that attackers are actually present within those functions. So, yeah, that would be
sometimes we are lacking detection as well, detection capabilities within the telco network. In P1 perspective, or when we are doing penetration testing, it is rare when we have faced, for example, EDRs within the system, and they will detect that something really happening. And it was happened also that we have seen EDRs within the lab environment and not deployed into the production environment, because there is always this misunderstanding, or like the vendor, they don't want that the operator, for example, put EDRs that they are third party within their systems. Otherwise, it may create some kind of problem of performance, and then the vendor, they need to operate, etc. So this is something that I believe it will be changing. It is changing because I saw that there are a lot of vendors, they are starting having collaboration and integrating some EDRs as part of their solutions. Also, with the AI sophistication of the APT, the detection it become harder. Like now the malware, for example, when they are put into the system, it's not like in a way we're going to put program that is malicious and it start doing some kind of malicious activity. Now we have multi-stage malware in a way that we're going to have a loader first. This loader, it's act or seen as legitimate from the system in case that we have some kind of EDRs, etc. And then the loader will be the one through some kind of encryption mechanisms, etc., try to pull and get or retrieve some kind of pieces of malware, sometimes from different sources, and get merged, getting as chunks and merge them directly, and then execute it directly fileless mode without even file within the systems. So there are plenty of techniques that today they are used by the EPT, and the goal is to be stealthy and also to make persistence, as Kai said, port knocking or ISMP magic methods, so they can keep the persistence within the compromised system.
And you're both mentioning, TTPs that are quite, I wouldn't say known, but approachable from the IT perspective. But one of the reality, as Kai was mentioning, is like the stacking of unique protocols and unique telecom realities. Roman asks a question on: is the lawful intercept in the context of Salt Typhoon? Is the lawful intercept protocol themselves not particularly at risk? We all think about the not so famous SS7, which is flawed by default. Is it the case also for even those extremely critical functions that is lawful intercept or some other functions in more modern technologies?
So here we were talking about detection, and the detection, it should come like through different stages. The attacker, before they manage or they arrive to the legal interception, they already started like somewhere. So it means that somehow we had lack of detection through different perspectives, through different domain. So the IT domain should be like well protected. We have detection, etc. And sometimes we lack this kind of detection. If we arrive into the operation and management and we are into the legal interception, it's some kind of already too late. It means that the attacker, they already penetrate the network and they manage to evade the defenses. And it is true that in this type of protocol, this type of system, they may also lack in this kind of detection mechanisms to avoid the exfiltration.
Okay. So in the case of lawful intercept, it's kind of too late. But if we were to look at, what are the critical vulnerabilities that endanger the specific telecom vulnerabilities. Just putting a bit of context on there is what we are seeing is generally Liminal Panda, Salt Typhoon, the people behind SK, we don't know who they are, but the people behind SK, they are exploiting everything that is available to the hand, mostly IP attack surface, but it's extremely clear that their focus is telecom assets. And so they would get in through IP and through IT perspective. And then at one point, they are aiming for those telecom assets. And what are, for you, critical vulnerabilities unique to telecom?
So maybe I can start. So when we look at the telecom infrastructure or operator attack surface, it is huge, right? We have the attacker, they can come from different perspective. They can come from roaming perspective, they can come from internet perspective, they can come also from some kind of physical access to the cell site or some kind of FTTH fiber to home installation. And from there, they can gain access toward or the initial access, right? However, a lot of attacks are happening from the internet, where we're going to have a lot of APTs like Salt Typhoon, like Scatter Spider, like Phantom Taurus, and many others. They will use this attack surface so they can gain their initial access. They can attack either edge devices like firewalls, VPNs, etc. They can even attack some employees via phishing, smishing, fake job notice, etc. So when they are inside, the thing that can protect the operator, if let's say there is no detection, is the network segmentation, right? And especially toward the OSS NMS system for network management systems. These are huge systems that they are They can be the bridge between the IT and the operational technology, where we have all the network element like RAN, core, etc. They are installed. In some scenarios, and this is also P1 have seen this, there are some, it will depend on security maturity of operator. In a way, we already witness some flat network. From the IT perspective, we can directly communicate with the NMS system, right? So this is the first problem where the vulnerabilities they arise, to answer your question. Poor network segmentation. Second, when we look at these systems, they are more than 300, 400, 500 machines or different IP within the system. You need to harden this system. You need to be sure what is exposed, what is not exposed. And also, you need to be careful what users and password you are using. And in a lot of time, and still today, most vulnerabilities identified into the 5G or any other technology within the operator is default password. It's super complex to maintain a good list, robust list, etc. So these two combine to each other. Poor network segmentation, default passwords, so the attacker can propagate, and also they will not raise alarms because we are acting as a legitimate user trying to access a specific machine. Once we are inside, then we are into the operation and management segment. We control everything. We can even get username and password or credentials or token to access other network element like HSS, like RAN, etc. And from there, they can move and they can attain their objective. So network segmentation for me and poor or default credentials are the most huge attack surface, unnecessary attack surface that we can find within an operator.
And I will add to that, if that's okay, Pierre. If we didn't want to move on to the next point, is from like a signaling perspective, is the fact that MNOs, they by design they have to interface with external entities. This could be to enable such use cases like roaming or international calling, for example. And if we take SS7 as an example, which is very famous, we're all aware of the vulnerabilities there. The fact is that an MNO needs to open some sort of a door to external peers to peer for various use cases as mentioned. But at this link, we should have some sort of specialized firewall to actually be protocol aware. So, it's not just IT aware source destination protocol, but it actually looks within the telecom signaling. So in this case, SS7, and it knows and it takes the information from that protocol and compares it with the policies on the firewall. So looking at SS7, let's say it's a wide known attack for malicious actors to actually lease global titles and use them to launch attacks into, let's say, your mobile network to try to retrieve subscriber information, subscribers they actually do not need to concern themselves with. And one thing that can cause problems here is actually this signaling firewall, which is meant to act as a point of security to make sure we are not receiving and processing requests from malicious global title leasing entities. It should check, the calling party address. So where did the message come from? And check that with against a list of, let's say, global titles, which are known that, okay, one, we have not set up a legitimate agreement with, and also that they have reports or they are known to be malicious. And also there are deeper level of inspections which can be done. Is this subscriber they're targeting actually one of their own subscribers? Do they have any reason to send this type of message over the roaming link, for example? So this tends to be a way where vulnerabilities can arise over this roaming link, or in a more modern situation within the 5G core network, whereby we have a security control which we can use, so MTLS or OAuth2, but it's not always implemented and deployed well at that matter. So any network function internally that receives a request may actually provide the information that the peer has asked for, the malicious peer, without thinking twice. So issues can arise here as well.
Thank you, Guy. And one resource that I would strongly advise everyone to look at, particularly maybe those not aware in Europe, but Guy won't fight against me on the crown patriotism, but the UK has been extremely forward-looking in the field of telecom security. And the UK Telecoms Act, the GT leasing ban, basically everything that Ofcom is doing. UK is one of the rare countries where they have a telecom security regulator dedicated to our field, and they've made really strong resources super useful for any MNO, and I know we have MNOs that are actively listening now and that will be listening over replay. But look at their resources; they are super strong. But back to your to the context of signaling as being quite unique vulnerability in telco. I think Liminal Panda is one of the attacker that used roaming security as their initial point of access. Mehdi, what tactics are different for this APT in comparison to Sol Typhoon or SK Telecom?
A good question, Pierre. So here the perspective is different. So Liminal Panda was coming from the roaming perspective. It means that they are trying to take this trust relationship between two different MNOs. So either we have a malicious MNO or a compromised MNO. And from there, we have this link, so that should be protected through IPX ShareX network. The Liminal Panda starts scanning the exposition of services within this network. In this kind of network, we should have only some specific authorized services that they should be exposed. But in this case of, I think it was South Asia, where I have seen a report, intelligence report done by Unit 42, and they said that the initial attack surface happened through external DNS. So external DNS into the Ruby perspective is a crucial element. So we can do the resolution of the different domain, FQDN, toward these corresponding IP addresses, so we can reach the resources of the other MNO. So these DNS, they were exposing, for example, the SSH protocol through the roaming perspective. So this is something management should never be exposed in this kind of network. So they took advantage of this, used default or not robust password, and they managed to compromise the external DNS. Once inside, so now we have another leg toward the core network. So we're going to conduct various lateral movement activities so we can reach our objective. And for instance, the objective is the core network element. So the various lateral movement that was conducted by Liminal Panda was via SSH protocol. This is what was into the report. And for me, it means that they were using also some default passwords so they can move laterally with the system. And once again, this is some high vulnerabilities used by APTs to compromise the system, because the reality is, why you're going to use 0 days or n days if you can compromise the whole system using insecure passwords? So when they are into their objective, now we're going to start to communicate with the SGSN. So the SGSN, they are the MME IMF of the 2G, 3G technologies. And they will host a lot of sensitive information. So the Liminal Panda goal was clearly signaling intelligence, trying to get, for example, some kind of location, try to get some sensitive information from the users. And what is interesting also is the exfiltration. The exfiltration of data was done via the GTP, via the SS7 protocol. The communication with the command and control system was done via DNS. So all these, some kind of sophisticated, let's say, manner techniques that mention that this APT, they have knowledge or deep knowledge about the telco infrastructure. So by doing so, they are minimizing the possibilities of detection, because exfiltration data via GTP or SS7, already the operator have massive traffic. Add to it some other traffic, maybe it will not be visible via some solution tools, either IDS or whatever. So this was the techniques that they were used by Liminal Panda to attack the operator.
Thank you, Mehdi. We have a couple of questions that I can take, which are from P1 perspective. Do we see an increase in red team from Michel in red team demands, and Roman on regulator push towards more certifications on telecom security? So Michel, the answer is yes. We've received quite a lot of red team. We currently have, I think, 3 team members currently on site somewhere in the world performing some red teams from RAN perspective, from FTTH core. We do have some red team assessments also upcoming on the non-terrestrial networks. So yes, definitely the the security officers want to have some kind of same level experience with communicative hackers. So yes, that's definitely a big area of growth, I would say, for P1. And this is also linked to the question from Roman. Europe is actively working on a project called Coordinated Preparedness Testing for digital infrastructure, for critical digital infrastructure. That means telecom, healthcare, and submarine cables. They are looking for partners, and so if other people want to partner with Europe, they are actively looking to be able to build a framework in which all MNO should be able to answer to their CSERTs. They are national agencies, to be able to have a common framework within the 27 to answer on that type of basic security hygiene from a unique telecom sector perspective. Another set of questions would be on the container part. Kai, you touched upon it a little bit, the containerization on 5G. Alexander asked if we can recommend malware scanners for CNF-based core to battle the supply chain poisoning. And where I completely agree with Alexander that this is a very interesting topic is the supply chain. Supply chain is huge. We have a colleague from the signaling security world who's been hacked yesterday. For sure, everyone is at risk, and we put at risk the client we serve. So we have to be very scary. So if one of you want to discuss container poisoning in FFVI environment, tools, open source tools that you may know, I don't know, hot potato moment.
So I mean, go ahead, Mehdi. I will let you go first.
So in terms of because I saw the question into the screen, and they were like some tools for detection tools. I am not aware of any, let's say, standard tool that is used. There are plenty of them. They are used from vulnerability analysis perspective from different operator or vendor, so they can assess the vulnerability of the different container. But when we talk about the supply chain, this is something really, really interesting. So first of all, because I have seen a question, I don't know, some kind of container poisoning. So I believe it was like through the container registry, and we're going to try to deploy, for example, a malicious container there, and then it's gonna get pushed where there is a core network within the cluster, and then we have a vulnerability there, or persistent there, or a way for an attacker to get in. So in a lot of cases, the container image, it is private, right? It is not, we are not using the public one. So the way it means that the attacker, they cannot just poison one public, and then the operator, they will take this one, pull this one, and put it into the environment. However, it may be possible via an attack against the 5G core network. In a way, sometimes when we compromise the cluster, we can even identify some username and password or credentials. They are stored among the secrets, and these credentials, they give access directly to the container, private one that is used by the defender or by the operator. By doing this, it is possible or highly plausible that this type of attack might happen. Now, when it comes to the supply chain, and it was a race of attack into the supply chain, and we have witnessed this with this worm called Shai Ulud, and now we are seeing the Shai Ulud version 2 that doing a highly compromised, for example, and this is related to the NPM registry, so related to JavaScript Node.js application. Here, I think that the perception of the thing, they will be changed in a way that it should be obligation of any vendor in general. When they take any third-party tool, we need to have some kind of set of scanning and verification, security verification against this third party before deploying them within the network. Sometimes it is not done. We just pull because they are trusted. But with the increase of attack on the maintainers and on the registries, it should become mandatory so we can decrease this type of vulnerabilities.
And I'll make just one quick mention about supply chain security. It's a bit more of a boring answer, but if we look at ORAN specifications, just to take them as an example, actually we are starting to see that within the specifications there is more often now the requirement for SBOM, which is a software bill of materials, which is basically requiring that every vendor who is introduced into an MNO's network has to provide a comprehensive, detailed list of all of the different components that make up their pieces of software, so their network functions. And these could be the actual CNFs they deliver. So let's say you have a certain vendor of core network, and let's say they're delivering an AMF. They won't just say, okay, you have the AMF, here's the version. They will list the components that make up the AMF. And the idea is that if you have the complete picture of what's contained there, you'll be aware when there's a vulnerability, let's say in a certain library, which is based upon some open source library, you'll be aware that there is a vulnerability in your AMF because it uses this component. So that is one little point of what's starting to be used to address some supply chain issues. I know it's not solving the complete problem, but it seems at the moment that it could be an effective solution for it.
Yeah. So supply chain, it was, I think, a huge around 2023, 2024 discussion in US and all around the world, how we can secure this. And the SBOM, as Kai talked about it, these are some kind of mechanism to help us so we can know if we have any software material there that is vulnerable, and we patch it. But the reality is really different. Like when you have, for example, vendor that they are lacking the SBOM through their own product, it's become super difficult because you cannot patch something that you don't know that is vulnerable. And this has happened. We witnessed this in a way that we have, for example, a vendor is using a product from another, let's say, vendor to build the CLI or to build like any other product, and the vendor is also using another software. So sometimes we don't have this deep knowledge of all the software build material. When we were discussing about with the vendor and say like, you are vulnerable to this known CVE on the third-party open source tool, they were like, no, we are not using this at all within our software. And this is proof that sometimes we have lack of this SBOM from the vendor vendor themselves.
Yeah, SBOM for me is a topic that has been around for a long time, and I think that the necessary completeness and exhaustivity that every single vendor that you may want to have and connect to your net, I mean, it's going to be a long battle, but it's definitely uphill, and so we can't expect SBOM to answer to everything because it's never going to be complete enough. And there is also the focus on innovation. That's something that the security teams are telling us a lot is we would love to have IPsec everywhere, but outside of the costs, it's also latency, it's also those reality. And as security professionals, we have also to take into account the business realities. But those business realities are still exposed to those big attacks, and I think Typhoon is making a great case for MNO security professionals. It brings financial value to 564 million US dollars. This is the amount of a fine and only the fine. But for me, where I'd be curious for both of you guys is we assume compromise, early compromise everywhere. Should you be in the wrong side of the field, where would you be? Where would you try to approach? What is the domain where you would like to start by a potential attack? When we are doing red teams, sometimes we are oriented by our clients. Sometimes we do whatever we want. But for you, what's your preferred area that would be interesting for the audience to know that maybe they would want to focus on this? Kai mentioned the AMF. We've done tons of work on the AMF. It's definitely critical, but I'm sure there is other ones. Who wants to go first?
Well, I can go.
Sure.
I mean, one real interesting component to get to would be the sort of network management systems. So let's say you have your entire telecoms core network or RAN connected to this network management system. And if you were to gain access here and a privileged level of access, the amount of components and privileged access you could have there would really give you complete control over the network. So that's probably the aim. If you would want to get anywhere to have a good level of control and privilege, you would probably aim for there. But if you're not so lucky and you don't really get to that privileged access, the management systems, then you could go and move laterally. Let's say you've compromised a network function and it's not really an exciting network function, doesn't have a lot of data. Maybe you can move laterally between network functions within a core network. So moving laterally, for example, to the UDR within the 5G core network, which would hold subscriber keys, which is used to integrity protect and encrypt and cipher their traffic control plane and user plane if it's actually deployed, which, okay, there's another argument that it's not always going to be protected, but if it is and you have the keys, then great. And Mehdi mentioned SK Telecom. And actually, this was one point which they were able to get into the keys, the subscriber private keys on the network, and that's why SK Telecom had to actually issue subscribers new SIM cards. I guess Mehdi wants to go now.
Mm-hmm. So I would rather go from what the IPTs now today they are, from where they are attacking. And they are attacking from the internet. And once again, because this is a huge attack surface from the internet perspective. So we have a lot of 0 days happening into the our end devices or devices they should protect our network. Like it was the recent tendency for these recent years. So we talk about firewalls, VPNs, etc. So the last month we had, in November, we had a silent patch from Fortinet. There were 2 vulnerabilities that if they are chained, they can lead to a remote code execution and, for instance, give the initial access for the attacker. It's the responsibility of home. So the thing is, vulnerabilities we're going to have always, right? So every day I am hearing about a new remote code execution somewhere happening. When we take this case, for example, of Fortinet, right? So they have the vulnerability, it happens, they fix it. But when you look at the responsibility of the operator, if an operator gets compromised by this vulnerability, first of all, console or web console of Fortinet should not be available or exposed to the internet. So here we have some kind of part of the responsibility that leads to this initial compromise. Then you have the employees. So we had a raise of fake job announced, for example, to compromise the different employees or the different users. And this is a tactic that was used a lot by the Lazarus group from the North Korea. In a way, and we will not even attack from the email. This is the most important, that as operator, big companies, etc., we're going to have a lot of filtering around our, for example, emailing, etc. So we detect a spam or we detect a malicious email, we can raise an alarm and protect the user. What happens for LinkedIn? How do we protect today our user that they are into the LinkedIn and get contacted by malicious actors? And for the Lazarus group, for example, tactic that they will communicate with them, anyone, for example, let's say they have open to work or any other mention, communicate with them. There is the best job that you can have. So they build the whole social engineering strategy. And at the end, okay, we're going to use this, for example, WebEx or this application for the interview. When we go to the application, you need to install a plugin. So the user is really into it, that doesn't expect that maybe something going to happen and it can lead to its compromise. Right? Or we're going to say like, okay, you are a developer, we have a GitHub project, can you pull it? Can you continue the development? And this GitHub project will contain some kind of malicious code that they will attack or compromise the user. And from there, we're going to have an initial access, sometimes with a lot of privileges within the operator domain that may lead directly access to the OEM domain. And from there, the attacker, they can continue, as we said earlier, to the crown jewel and compromise the whole infrastructure.
Thank you, guys. Question on if we pursue the topic of how do you enter and what's your preferred one, there is more and more expanding attack surfaces. Kai, you know quite well about ORAN. The edge, we are seeing more and more equipment that being deployed on the enterprise, so client enterprise premises that are connected to the MNO core network, although not on the physical premises of the MNO. So that generates a lot of scare. We also have, slicing kind of non-terrestrial network with the ground station being connected. So I would put device-to-device satellite links quite in a different realm, as we are not looking at the MNO infrastructure. But within those, what is for you an interesting topic? I'm going to give the word to Kai easily on from its ORAN perspective, but curious also on the other scopes.
Yeah, so one mechanism, I forgot the question completely, but yeah, so for example, in ORAN, new, so it's not so new anymore, but it's new in the sense of ORAN is constantly adapting and constantly releasing new versions of their specifications. It's a work in progress for a new kind of ideology within telecoms. And one mechanism they have mentioned within their security requirements is zero trust. And this is a new mindset of how we look at our telecom networks. So I briefly mentioned earlier, within a core network, you may have two network functions internally within the same network. But still, we shouldn't use that as a reason that they should trust each other. We should assume that there is a compromise. So, for example, network function gets compromised within, let's say, an ORAN system. Or let's say within the 5G core, for a clearer example, let's say we have an SMF which is compromised, and it's trying to speak to another network function to try and retrieve some subscriber information. Let's say it's trying to speak to the UDR, or it's trying to claim that it's the AMF, for example. Let's say like the AMF would request authentication vectors from AUSF within the 5G core network. But the AUSF shouldn't just say, okay, I trust you because you're in the same network. We need to assume that each network function is compromised. So this is the principle of zero trust, that no matter where you are in the network, we just won't automatically trust you. Without going into the fine details too much, but this is the general idea that we rely on micro-segmentation, not the standard network perimeter. And ORAN's mentioned because they were, they're obviously adding it into their specifications. They're trying to conform to it, but they admit that it's an incremental process and it will take time to actually get to an optimal stage in zero trust words. They're at an initial stage whereby, they're getting there with zero trust maturity, but they're not quite there yet. And to bring it back into 3GPP world, they also did a study on zero trust within typical 3GPP deployments, and they admittedly say, okay, they're conforming to 0.1 to 3 of zero trust tenants, as they're called, but actually the rest 4 to 7 they don't comply with. So just a quick example, as mentioned, network functions have the ability, if the vendor supports it, to actually authenticate each other, to say, we trust each other, using MTLS, for example. But where they fall short could be with logging. So real-time logging of network functions, security-specific logging, like there is logging for network functions, but security-specific logging where decisions can be made based on the real-time security posture, security status of a network function, that is not there yet. So it's an incremental process, but it seems to be a sensible progression in the way telecom networks are actually looked at and how they're secured. So I'm certainly interested to see it take more hold as the generations go along. I mean, with 3GPP, it would be more 6G or 5G advanced that we start seeing it more. I mean, we're in 5G advanced now, but as we get into 6G and as ORAN, we will see as the specifications evolve.
Thank you very much, Kai. And do you have any addition on the topic of the new attack surface, Mehdi? I think you're muted, Mehdi. We don't.
Yes, from especially the ORAN, it's true. It's in terms of the technology or specification, this is something good. This is something huge for the RAN, but also it's increased the attack surface on the RAN in a way that now that we have the segregated RAN into 3 pieces, RU, DU, and also the CU, it could add a layer where the attacker can come in, especially if we have radios, imagine from a different vendor, or an attacker gain physical access to a radio and try to remove it and plug themselves as a radio. They have now access directly to the DU, and from there they can start attacking the network. What I want to add is there were a phrase said by Mike Burgess, and he is the head of intelligence security organization of Australia, and they were talking about the status of cyber attack on Australia, right? And especially on Salt Typhoon, that they are attacking the critical infrastructure within Australia. And there is a phrase said that when the attacker, they gain the initial access, we have the network that is penetrated, right? What comes next is a matter of intent, not capabilities. So what we see today from the APT, they have a lot of sophistication in the way they can be hidden, they know their environment, and they can achieve their objective. And this is without talking about the era of the AI that scale this to the maximum level, in a way that some kind of capacity for the security or like hackers team that they needed to penetrate the network. Now using the AI, we can replace a lot of hackers, and we can conduct malicious activity. And this is continuing, and it is increasing a lot, either via malicious LLM or via jailbreaking mode, and use the online LLM that we have, so we can conduct malicious activities. So for my perspective, with this increase of attack surface, and with this increase of sophistication, in the other side, we need to be prepared in a way that LLM or AI should also be included in defense perspective, so we can increase our detection, etc. And really, we need to go back to the basics. These basics are easy to comprehend, but are not simple to put in place, and they are network segmentation, security hygiene, and detection on all our attack surface management, either external or internal. And why not add in some kind of deceptive technologies, especially, for example, honey tokens, that they are sometimes easy to put in place and they are high effective. In a way, I go to legitimate system. I will put into different places some kind of set of credentials, tokens, etc. Because this is the way how it is today into telecommunication. We find some kind of these relics or some kind of information just within the system. We put this kind of information in a way that when they got triggered, directly that gives an alarm to the SOC. And this is like a powerful way if we want to increase our detection using this deceptive technology.
Thank you very much, Mehdi. I think you're putting, the reality of telecom security is expanding attack surface, increased complexity of attack surface, and the sheer need of resources. And one thing that we are faced against every day with our customers and partners and everyone working on this field is the difficulty to convey a message that would unlock some internal resources. There is some financial ones, but also from some people. And one thing that we have built in the last few weeks is a tool that would help information security professionals in MNOs to kind of explain to the business side of things why they would need to invest and why they are vulnerable to any type of attacks. So bear with us, because this is very much something that you're the first to see, the first to access. We are looking for feedback. It's not a complete product, it's not a paying product, it's just help, that because we feel it can help you to have some kind of rating of your attack surface, your telecom attack surface. And the link will be shared on the chat by Amin in a couple of minutes. But what I will share with you is the actual conclusion of this telecom attack surface. So up, you can see it here. I'm going to remove Mehdi and Kai, you will see very soon. But the idea for us is to provide you with a very simple report. So you would need to go through a basic questionnaire and basic matrix completion to understand where are your main areas of risks. As you can see, we try to make it visual, simple, and clear so that you can transfer it to a budget owner. a budget holder and allows them to understand what are the operational impact, financial impact, regulatory impacts. Those are international, wide. It's not extremely precise. Obviously, you can imagine that we can't take into account every single regulatory change from EU to Singapore through Myanmar, going by Chile, Peru, and the US. So it's just a quick help. We hope it can be helpful. We also, summarize some recommendations that some unique proprietary knowledge to P1 has been input, some 3GPP elements, and hopefully this can be helpful. So we would love to hear from the audience in this webinar to gather some feedback. We want to push that at the next MWC. Again, this is a free tool. We don't plan to have some money out of it. We just want to make it useful for people, because sometimes we are seeing a lot of people who want to do something about it, but are unfortunately blocked by the complexity of the organization they are evolving with. So let us know, talk to us, how we can improve, how we can make it better. That's we are really looking forward for your feedback on this. And before leaving you guys, I think we can have Mehdi and Kai back for any last words. Maybe Mehdi, you have a last word, a conclusion on the TelcoSec attacks and telecom security sector.
So my last word would be that the what we are seeing today, it will be more increase into the future, because the telco sector in general is a sensitive sector and mission critical. In fact, in 2023, by the NCD, National Agency of France, they have been considered as super critical. In a way, any attack directly impacting the telco network, they could have a direct impact on the other mission critical, sectors. So for that, we need to be prepared. We have the AI that can include, for me, it can bring a lot of maturity or a lot of benefits to the defense perspective. We need to use it, try it, and unlock its potential, because the reality of it is the attacker, they are using it already and have been seen into different reports, either against Anthropic, it was a recent one, or via some reverse engineering on malware, and we have seen some kind of tokens that we know that it is generated by AI.
Thank you, Mehdi. Kai, the word of the end.
Yeah, so I mean, we see that telecoms networks are extremely critical, and I just want to make a point that actually it's not just the risk of the loss of personal data or sensitive information. These networks are so critical that they can actually endanger life, and like we see in Ukraine, for example, with Kyivstar, which was subject to a victim of a cyber attack, which was known as has been described as one of the most impactful cyber attacks of recent times, whereby the civilians in a war zone were not able to receive air raid alerts and even make emergency calls. So we see that telecoms attacks can actually endanger lives, and the impacts of them can be massive. So there needs to be a big change in the industry, and it seems that various governments, as Pierre mentioned, Ofcom and UK government has introduced TSA and GT leasing bans, and there needs to be joint ownership and collaboration between all the stakeholders, between vendors, MNOs, and all the other stakeholders involved to actually improve telecom security. And it's not easy, but it has to be done, and it needs to improve. That's it from me.
Can't emphasize enough. Won't add anything to what guys are saying. I think the conclusion is really, really on point. And I think the community is going in the right direction, but it's too long. I think that's the whole idea. What we're seeing with P1, we've been in the business for 15 years. Basically, we hope we run out of business, but it's the opposite that's happening. So I guess. I guess let's keep on working. Thank you very much, everyone, for listening, for tuning in. Let us know how we can be better, but it was a pleasure to speak with you. Thank you so much, Mehdi and Kai, and let's speak soon.
Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.